the property management industry, fair housing offenses are considered especially troubling. In the United States, a dedicated fair housing attorney, Leslie Tucker, provides case explanations and best practices. These are some cases.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fair Housing Insiders Case Files, Episode 4 with Leslie Tucker, the principal at Williams, Edelstein, and Tucker, and I'm your host, Jonathan Sarr. We are talking about a case that delves into the protected category of familial status. The case, United States versus Melinda Bautista. This case alleges discrimination against a couple that moved into a rental property and then decided to have children. Leslie, can you give us some more details?
Yeah, absolutely, Jonathan. I thought this is a great case because I hear from clients all the time their concerns about families that increase in size over time and how to handle that. So I thought this was a really good case to talk about. This case involves a couple in California. They moved into a one-bedroom unit at a conventional property. The wife was actually pregnant when they moved in, but the landlord wasn't aware of it at the time. The complaint alleges that, after the couple got pregnant for the second time and the landlord became aware of it, she told them allegedly that the unit was only intended for, a husband and a wife and a baby, not for a family of four. And the complaint alleges that the landlord told them that they would need to leave that unit. The couple alleges that the landlord repeatedly asked them to move into a larger unit size, a 2-bedroom and a 3-bedroom, but that those unit sizes are obviously going to be more expensive than their current 1-bedroom unit. The couple alleges that for months, the landlord repeatedly pressured them to move, told them that, 2 children cause too much wear and tear on a unit, that their unit was not intended to be occupied by a family, and even alleged that the landlord called them on the day their child was born to ask them to leave the unit. The landlord never terminated their lease because of occupancy issues, but the plaintiffs, the couple, eventually did move out, citing all of the pressure that they received as the reason for vacating the unit. They filed a HUD complaint. HUD found that, a violation likely occurred, and then this lawsuit was just very recently filed.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm glad we're talking about this. Very unique bullet points there on what happened to this family and what's going on with the landlord. So, question for you. I understand that families with children are protected under the Fair Housing Act, but can a family continue to increase in size without ever moving into a larger unit?
So, no, that's not necessarily true. A landlord is absolutely permitted to enforce a reasonable occupancy policy. Now, in this case, it wasn't entirely clear whether the landlord was relying on a specific occupancy policy or whether she just, maybe believed that this unit was too small for a family of 4. But it's absolutely a landlord's right to have that policy, to enforce it. And in conventional housing, enforcing an occupancy policy means that you can require a household to move to a different unit size if they exceed the occupancy limit for their current unit. Now, I think it's arguable that a baby wouldn't necessarily tip that scale into exceeding an occupancy policy. But after a certain age, like maybe 2, that child would then count as an extra person. In this case, if a legitimate policy existed that limited the occupancy for that 1-bedroom unit, the landlord would have had the right to enforce it. But I think that the other issues involved in this case revolve around the allegations of, the repeated comments and the phone calls and all the communications that the landlord allegedly made about families with children.
Right. Okay. So that logically brings us to our next question. What factors should be considered when creating an occupancy policy?
Well, in federally funded housing, that occupancy limit is already laid out for you, right? By HUD or by USDA. In conventional housing, there isn't necessarily a concrete standard that is required under the law. So there is more leeway for landlords to be able to create their own policies. However, whether HUD would find those policies to be reasonable is another question. So HUD has laid out some factors that should be considered when you are creating your occupancy policy. Some of those factors are the age of the occupants, right? Are they all adults? Are some of them children? How old are the children? The layout and size of the unit. So if there might be, some additional space within the unit that could be used as a sleeping area, that is something you should take into consideration. And of course, the local occupancy code is relevant as well. So there are some factors and there is some leeway when it comes to creating these policies, but it is clear that the traditional strict 2 persons per bedroom standard is really no longer accepted as reasonable by HUD. That's viewed as discrimination on the basis of familial status.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. So if a landlord knows that a tenant is pregnant, which will eventually result in the household exceeding the occupancy limit, how should they handle that?
A landlord should never require someone who is pregnant to move in anticipation of the fact that, an extra person will eventually be residing in that unit. Again, it's probably, it's not reasonable to expect someone to have to move until that baby, that child reaches a certain age. If that extra person then puts them in, exceeding your policy, then in conventional housing, it is reasonable to require them to move to a larger unit size. And if you do have a policy like that, the age of the child does need to be, explicitly stated in your policy when that child counts as an extra person.
Okay, very good. Another interesting case. Thank you for your insight, Leslie. Appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to our show. This concludes episode 4 of the Fair Housing Insiders Case Files. Until next time, take care, everyone.